Please ignore the chaos of my bookshelves, my craft shelf, and my floor. This is my super professional YouTube background. Alright, I have this thing, this block in my brain, that whenever I have an idea, I feel like I can't actually execute the idea until everything is right and everything falls into place and all of the pieces align and I'm not forgetting any possible thing, which is silly because when you're talking about books especially, best of lists are going to change, things you like in books are going to change, there's constantly new stuff being put out that's going to fit under the heading of whatever it is you're talking about, and the internet is bottomless. More than one post can exist. So I've had these lists kind of kicking around in my bullet journal for quite a while of characters that I love, side characters that I love, worlds that I love, titles that I love, things like that. And for the most part, I hold off on posting about them because I'm like, I know there are things that I'm forgetting that I want to talk about, and I just keep putting it off. But like, the video doesn't have to be a one-off. So I have talked about characters that I love, I want to say. And I did a title book chat and kind of took care of some of that. But all of the more focused things that I've been wanting to talk about that I've been putting off, I want to put off no longer. So expect some just random lists of like 4 Western YAs that I love, or 6 great fictional side characters, or whatever it may be, because then down the line I can always do a part 2 of like 5 more Western YAs, or whatever it is. So yeah, I'm trying to shut up that inner voice and just share good books. So today I'm going to do just that with one of my favorite topics, which is some of my favorite worlds, my favorite settings. I think for most people, world and characters are the make it or break it elements of a book. When I kind of sit down to think about my own favorites, I think there are some things that kind of unite them all together, some things that stand out, and you'll probably see a lot of fantasy anytime I talk about this. And that's because I like to see a world built from the ground up. But I don't think that a world has to be created by the author in totality for it to kind of work and fit as one of your, favorite book worlds. I think even something that just really paints a picture of a city that you've never been to, or is just like a perfect slice of life in a small town community, I think those can just as easily fall under the heading of favorite bookish worlds. But today I'm going to share with you 5 of the books that most immediately come to mind whenever I am thinking about transportative worlds that I love and that stick with me and that I have actual concrete memories of, because I tend to forget the details of things. Everything goes fuzzy pretty quickly after I'm finished with a book, but these worlds haven't. So you've probably seen most of these books mentioned from me before, because they are tried and true loves, and I think a lot of that can be accounted to the world building and the way the setting made me feel. So I'm going to get right into 5 worlds I love and would visit. The first one, and one that I feel like does not get talked about nearly enough, is the world of The Lost by Sarah Beth Durst. I feel like, I don't remember if the city was called The Lost or if it was called like The After, or I think it was called The Lost. Oh, maybe it wasn't. I'm pretty sure it was just called Lost, like it was the city of Lost, and I don't think I can go too much into detail about what exactly Lost is. It's right here on the back of the book. It says Welcome to Lost. I did my research for this video. Anyway, I don't think I can really go into detail about what exactly Lost is, because that would give away basically the major thrust of the story, but something about Lost, the place and the idea of it, and what is found there, wormed its way under my skin in a way that few books have. And we're 5 years on now from the publication of this book, which means we're more like 5.5 years since I read it, and I mean, it still feels vivid and immediate. Like, I still feel like I can conjure it up, and that is really, really something I have to give Sarah credit for. And it's also something I have to give her credit for her writing style in general, because it was a struggle for me whether to put this book on or Vessel on the list or Stellar Knockout Worlds, and one of the reasons that she is one of my sort of buzz authors to watch. Sorry I can't really give you more details than that, but I will say that though it is kind of fantastical, I don't really think that you would look at it as a stereotypical fantasy setting. It feels very contemporary and relatable. It's something that you can see and sort of recognize, buy into with ease. You're not going to have to like conjure up mental images of these alien things that you've never heard of or had experience with. I mean, it's all kind of real world concrete stuff, twisted a little bit, and it's just so good. Kind of bridging the gap between the real world side and the fantastical side is another of my absolute favorite worlds that just still feels so immediate and present and fully realized. And that is the sort of dual worlds, maybe more than dual actually, of the Daughter of Smoke and Bone series. So this is set in Prague, which I think feels very fully realized, and I did feel like I was transported there, but it also stretches far beyond that. There's a bit of jet setting in the book, so there are other places that pop up, but the real kind of key for it is the fantasy side, the chimera side of the world, mostly represented by a city called Loramendi. This is a place where monsters and angels and fantastical beings exist, and they felt like an appropriate part of their world, and their world felt like an appropriate reflection of the creatures themselves, which isn't always the case with world building. It felt really rich in history, which is, that's my catnip, man. I love that. I love when it feels like something is really grounded and rooted in an author's true world building, researching, and answering questions for themselves. How is a city laid out? How does it function? What are the politics? What are the sciences? Things that lead to the development of a city, a place, a people, a culture, all of that kind of twining together. My favorite part of all, though, might be kind of the thing that links the two together, and that is Brimstone's shop, which opens into Prague and opens into this sort of other world, and is, I want to visit it. I mean, that's all there is to it. I want to go there. Might be dangerous, but I still want to do it. Next, we have another book that I've talked about pretty much anytime I've put a list together of like best of favorites, things that just have stuck with me for a long time. I always end up talking about Tin Star by Cecil Castellucci, but I don't think I've really talked about the world of the Urtina Frey. So this is actually Stone in the Sky book 2. This happens to me every time. I can never remember which shelf Tin Star is on, so I always use Stone in the Sky, and then as soon as I'm done recording, I find Tin Star every time. Basically, this is set in space. You can see a little space station planet-y thing in the background. The Urtina Frey is a space station on which the entirety of book 1 takes place, and I've talked in the past about how Tin Star is so good at capturing alienness, otherness, and having all of the characters not seem human, which is something that so many kind of space set and alien having books fall into. Like, just, it doesn't make sense. Why would all aliens be just like a human? That doesn't make sense. So Cecil Castellucci did a really good job of making the aliens feel alien, and I feel like the Urtina Frey, again, it's a logical setting for them. So it is kind of your typical space station. It feels like it's this man-made recognizable thing that you would see in, you know, Star Trek or something. It's got decks and levels and docks and launch pads and whatever, but it also has sort of a Western vibe. Like saloons and things like that, and kind of slummy areas. Different types of aliens tend to congregate in their own areas, so you have this exploration. Not everything is the same. Just because it is this sort of man-made, potentially sterile environment, it doesn't ever feel stale. It doesn't ever feel like everything is just repeated from level to level. There are all these different areas that Tula visits. There are places that are a little more risky and off limits. There are places that are a little more gritty and scary. The sort of cultural influences of all these aliens can kind of be felt throughout it because they've made it their home. So even though they're all in this same sort of regimented place, they've all put their stamp on it. And I think that that is just so well done, and it made it so inviting and engaging to explore. One that I think will be a little more sort of familiar and relatable to high fantasy lovers is the World of Gorehead from the Serafina series by Rachel Hartman. This is like that old world European feel, a lot of cobblestone and things like that, that are going to be recognizable to anyone who's ever seen any kind of like horses and swords fantasy novel. But it feels like it is its own thing, in part because of the way that she's built these characters and these sort of very cerebral and emotionless dragons that are able to take human form, and how they would kind of interact with the world, and how tensions between them and humans would kind of affect how things come together. There's a kind of mathematicalness, and it's very intriguingly medieval, if that makes sense. Rachel Herman is a big medieval nerd. I think she'd be the first to admit it. I think you need a nerd in something to build a really stellar world. It needs to be something that they're passionate about, that's going to spill over into the world building. You can tell that they know what they're talking about. They know what that part of the castle is called, because they give a shit about all of those little nuances and have read about it and studied it and whatever. That all goes into world building, and it pays off. And in this, it paid off. I felt like I was there. I could kind of see the city in my mind. Throughout the series, as they kind of leave the city and go into other places in this world, I could see them in relation to each other, and how the different sort of cultures or countries may have looked and how they interacted with each other. It just felt really fully realized and really appropriate to the story being told, and also very engaging. And lastly, for this grouping of 5 worlds that I love is The World of Zeta the Space Girl by Ben Hatke. So this obviously is set in space, and much like The World of Tinstar and what Cecil Castellucci did, Ben is great at making these alien creatures who really are their own thing. They function in their own ways. They are very kooky and quirky and not at all human-like, and that of course is eminently enjoyable. Mostly you're getting the world kind of visually here, and I think that it's not necessarily going to be something that is out of the realm of what you're used to. It looks kind of like a rocky moon place most of the time. Lots of openness and sort of sandstony buildings and things like that. But the real strength in it is kind of the bustle and the busyness of it. There's always so much going on in the backgrounds of panels, and all of these little characters coming out of nowhere and doing their little thing, and it just feels very alive and vibrant, and that pulls you right in. It was just so enjoyable. Everything about the series is so enjoyable. I love it so much. So there you have it. That is 5 worlds that I love, and it is the first of many. So you'll probably be seeing a follow-up to this video specifically with more worlds that I love, but you'll also hopefully be seeing other best of and 4 or 5 whatever recommendations of this little category. Those type of posts and videos. Just things where I can kind of highlight books that I've read and loved in different ways, and spend a bit of time enumerating the reasons why I loved them so much. So that is 5 books with worlds that I loved, that I felt very transported to, and that have stayed very present and visceral and real in my mind. And I would love to hear about some of yours. So recommend me some of your favorite worlds, or tell me about the ones that have just really stayed sharp and clear in your mind. Maybe years later. It could be things that you read as a kid. I mean, I think something like Where the Wild Things Are is a perfect example of this. Once you have that image, it will never ever leave. And if you have those books that do that for you, I want to know about them. So let me know in the comments, and also let me know if there are any kind of categories that you would like to see little best of lists like this for me to do, because I have a list and I want to add to that list, and I want to work my way through that list. So looking forward to chatting with you in the comments. That was my thumb popping if you heard that noise. That is all for this video. Until next time, thank you guys for watching, and happy reading!